A very good morning to all of you, and good evening to Rahul. So, thank you so much, Rahul, for accepting our invitation here in the series of food science and technology, variety of career opportunity, exclusively for food science and technology student, no matter they are at a graduate level, postgraduate level, or at their doctorate level, even the early career scientists who are at the beginning of their career and would like to know the more and more opportunity progress exponentially in the career of food science and technology. This is the only platform for them. So keeping that context in mind to help the community in food science and technology, this series has been organized by us, and therefore in this series I welcome you once again, and I'm thank you so much for accepting our invitation despite of your busy schedule. I know that you have recently gone in the University of Ohio State University, and in the initial stage I can understand there are a lot of responsibilities and tasks to perform, to show your potential, to show your ability, to show your honesty, to show your dedication towards the work. I imagine the busyness, but thank you so much for taking out time. I thought because on your biodata, we see the 2020, such a fresh feel we have. So you have recently completed BTech from our very own Institute of Chemical Technology from Food Engineering and Technology Department. I'm so proud that you were our student and one of the best students. So we are so proud of you and your achievements. Rahul is currently a graduate research fellow who is pursuing MS in food science and technology at the renowned institute known for food science and technology, that is the Ohio State University. He was formerly working as a research fellow with the Good Food Institute India, and also he has done his internship during his graduation at a well-known multinational company of India, that is ITC Limited in the foods division. So not only that, but I have seen Rahul as a very dedicated, talented, creative, innovative student during my entire stay in his stay in Institute of Chemical Technology. So Rahul has been a very, very good student. He has a lot many things to share so that other students can benefit. So in today's lecture, I have requested Rahul how he has cracked the GRE TOEFL exam and how he could make the way into food science and technology department at the Ohio State University. What are the various opportunity available there, which universities to select, how to grab those scholarships and fellowships so that the education, the financial burden of education becomes easier. So after immediately going to the Ohio State University, Rahul received a very prestigious fellowship, work fellowship. So I will be very happy, Rahul, if you share all those tips, secrets, so that the students community get benefited and follow your path and their life becomes more easier. So over to you. Thank you, Rahul, once again. Over to you, Rahul.
All right. Firstly, I'd just like to thank everyone who waking up at 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning to listen to me talk, give my 2 cents on where I am and how I'm here. So, and I'd also firstly like to thank Dr. Arya. I think she's been a very influential uh, educationist in my life and in the entire process. And she's been one professor whom I could reach out to if I have any questions through the process. And I'm very proud to say that we also have a paper that we published together. So I think that just proves that the foundation that me and Dr. Arya have together. So without any further ado, I'm just going to share a presentation that I have on me. So I hope my screen is visible.
Perfect.
Just one moment. Okay, I hope my screen is visible right now.
Yes, but is it possible to make it in a PowerPoint mode?
Right now?
Yes, very good, excellent.
Great.
Go ahead.
Okay, so good morning to everyone back in India. So I'm just going to be giving my 2 cents on how I know how do you pursue a food science graduate degree abroad. It can either be a master's or a PhD degree, and I'm going to be talking about three principal countries wherein the food science industry is booming currently, and there's been a lot of path-breaking research that's been conducted. So just like Dr. Arya said, this is a brief introduction of who I am. My name is Rahul Venkatram. I am currently a graduate research associate. So that's a combination of a research assistant plus a teaching assistant at the Ohio State University. My research here is focused on daily foods. And one part of what we aim to do is we are working exclusively on proteins and trying to minimize allergenicity globally. So I graduated in 2020 July with a BTech in food engineering and technology from the Institute of Chemical Technology. And from March to December, I worked as a science and technology fellow back at the Good Food Institute India. So for those who don't know what the Good Food Institute is, it's just a premier non-profit organization that is targeted towards consumer influentialism into converting into alternative protein products, such as I think a lot of you might have heard plant-based eggs, plant-based meat, and plant-based dairy that's been booming throughout globally. I worked as an operations intern under the Spark internship program back at ITC Limited, wherein I was assigned to their luxury chocolate brand called Fibel, wherein they wanted to optimize their manufacturing processes. So it is basically integrating a lot of engineering and the science of chocolate in getting a consistent product with lesser cases of blemishes and rejections. So, so the first question is, why would you actually want to pursue a graduate degree, say in food science? So A is to become an expert. I mean, everyone wants to specialize in a given domain, get a name, and want to become big in life. Uh, a- it's always known that a professional degree or a graduate degree gives you a head start in your career, because a lot of people might have seen when you apply for job portals, the minimum uh, qualification is no more a bachelor's, it's usually a master's or a PhD with 5 to 10 years experience on the line. And it gives you first hand both industrial as well as research experience. Research because you're going to be working on a lab scale, and a lot of organizations and institutes globally have a pilot skill plant associated with them, so you understand the whole process of how do you scale up an operation from your lab level to a pilot level, and what how do you troubleshoot problems. It leads to drastic amount of intellectual growth. You change as a person, your approach changes. I myself, since I've come to the States, the way I eat food is gradually changed over a period of time. I started looking for bioactives in food products. I mean, I know it's super cliche to mention that, but yeah, it does make a huge difference when you understand. The other day we were just making caramel popcorn for undergraduate lab, and if you see the amount of products, the amount of calorie rich product go into a caramel popcorn, you might probably not want to eat one. And another very interesting approach is people like to switch careers. So a lot of people who are majoring in chemical engineering, they start wanting to narrow down what they want to do. I have a lot of friends who have majored in microbiology, biotechnology back in their undergraduate, and start focusing on food science as time progresses. So, strictly talking from a bachelor's in food science point of view, people I have known, there are three mainstream approaches. I mean, there are a lot of permutation combinations here, but this talks about 80% majority of what the whole case is. So they either do a master's or a PhD in food science, food engineering, or even human nutrition. A lot of people switch to chemical engineering, but a lot of chemical engineering principles are somewhat coherent in food science. So for example, if you're looking at a fundamental like ultrafiltration, its roots in chemical engineering, but its highest application area is in food engineering. So the whole process, how you make whey protein isolate or how you make cheese, ultrafiltration is a key component. And a lot of people often do a PGDM or an MBA in food and agribusiness management. That's a very renowned degree back at IIM Ahmedabad. A lot of people resort to doing another degree. It's called agribusiness management, or people generally resort to doing like uh, another common MBA that's just a PGDM and MBA, and they usually get into a lot more analytical roles as time progresses. So this is what the general trend is. I mean, there are going to be outliers, but this is how the whole process generally works. Okay, so these are the brief universities in the US who have food engineering and allied sciences as a principal course. Talking of the Ivy League, we'll talk about Cornell University. That's one of the most premium known institutes. They have a lot of cutting edge technology in the area of bioactives, biopeptides. They do a lot of food engineering. They're working on a lot of novel technologies. And then you have UC Davis. UC Davis is the only fraternity in the UC set of colleges which offers a degree in food science. So you have an option for either a master's or a PhD in food science. University of Minnesota, another great college for pursuing your master's in food science. There is Dr. Pam Ismail back at University of Minnesota who does groundbreaking work in the field of plant-based proteins. She's the director of the Plant Protein Innovation Center, wherein there's a lot of cutting-edge technology relevant to today that takes place there, and it's also the hub of General Mills. So that's another added bonus. You have the Ohio State University. So the Ohio State University, where I currently study in, was established in 1870, and since 1870, agriculture was the very first department out there. So it's got a pretty renowned agriculture and food science department. Then you have Purdue University, you have University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, you have the Penn State University, you have Texas A&M, you have University of Nebraska at Lincoln, you have Rutgers, then you have Cal Poly State University at San Luis Obispo, which has got an excellent dairy technology program. Then you've got another umpteen number of colleges. NC State offers a very good food science program. Washington State University also has an excellent food science program. So the list I'm going to be basically talking about, it's a non-exhaustive list. There are a lot of institutes like Chapman University, which has just come up with a food science program, and they're also pretty heavily invested into nutrition. So this is US as a whole. There are a lot of colleges in the US who wherein you can apply for a food science program. But one point when you apply to a US university is that it's got a two-step application process. So the very first is you get accepted by the graduate school such that you can be a potential student in their program. And then you have to make sure that an advisor is willing to accept you in his research group. So this is very dissimilar to compared to other master's programs wherein you simply just apply for a program and you directly get into it. So you may have a lot of friends who are in allied sciences who will be getting 10, 15, 20 accepts from university, wherein people with food science generally narrowed down to 3 or 4 universities of their choice. So here it's very important that before applying to a university, you have the time to go and look at every individual researcher's profile. So who are the professors currently there? What are they currently teaching? What is their research focus area? How many students do they currently have? You should go and visit their site on Google Scholar and see and just go through or skim through a paper and see if that's something that interests you and would you like to be working as a part of their group. And then you slowly write them a very formal email briefly describing what your background is, what interests you in their research, something peculiar about a given subject matter in their paper, and that you would like to be a part of the research group. So here, a very useful suggestion was given to me by one of my seniors that the very first time you contact a professor, you never send them your CV directly. So what essentially happens is every university has a different firewall system built into them. So at times when you email something with an attachment directly, it's usually non-trusted and it goes up into a receiver's junk. So what you do is you write to them. You may have to follow up a couple of times, and that's something I did too. So you need to follow up to them, and once they write back to you, once you are in the network, you can slowly send them your CV and then probably they would want to set up a meeting with you, understand what your background is, how you are relevant at that moment, do you have what it takes. So when I was interviewing, I had applied for a master's program because doing a PhD wasn't something that I was 100% sure about at that moment, and I really didn't want to have a bad blood between a professor and just not be able to guide by whatever uh, like my commitments to them. So I was applying for a master's, and at that time a lot of people asked me, why don't you want to do a PhD? So you need to very skillfully get them the answer that you are interested in research, you aren't thinking long term as of now, but if you like it, you like to continue there. It's something similar along those lines. So this is just a brief about the universities in the US, and if any of you all have any questions, please feel free to just jot in and ask me whatever questions you guys have in mind. So the next one is Europe. So Europe is a very premium country where food science has originated over a large period of time. So you have ETH Zurich, which is the number one institute for food science globally. You have Wageningen University and Research, wherein they have three, four of different programs focused towards different food science principles. So you have one focusing exclusively towards proteins. You have food engineering there. You have nutrition there, and also you have food chemistry. Then University of Copenhagen has got an excellent brewing and dairy technology program if any of you are interested. And they also offer a lot of scholarships which you can apply to. You can just visit their sites and you have fellowship wherein they take care of your tuition fee usually, and but you've just got to pay for your own living cost. Then you have TU Munich back in Germany, another excellent program. A lot of exchange students go there under the DAD fellowship, which I'll be talking about later. And you've got University of Helsinki. So these are five universities wherein research has been predominantly impactful over the past couple of years. But there are a lot more university, and you can probably just take a look at others. And probably if it's something that interests you, I would definitely suggest applying to them. And then you have Canada. So Canada is another country gaining tremendous impetus over the past couple of years. You have University of British Columbia, wherein they don't have a lot of professors who are doing food engineering and food science, but the people who are doing very impactful research. You have McGill University. McGill University houses one of the most prestigious professors throughout. You have Dr. Hosali Ramaswamy out there who does excellent research, and he's won umpteen number of awards in the area of food science. You have University of Alberta. Then you have Centennial College, which is not a university, it's a college. It's in a smaller city, but it's got a pretty intensive food science program, not really focused towards research. And then you also have University of Saskatchewan, where also there is a good amount of research taking place, but these are fairly new departments altogether. So while you apply, so this is just a very general requirement of what you need when you apply to a grad school. You're going to need your transcripts, which basically summarize your grades over the past semesters, depending on when you apply. So if you apply in your third year, you'll have to submit 6 semesters, and if you're applying on your final year, you probably have 7 or 8. So transcript basically just summarize what your academic performance has been over the past uh, couple of years, sorry. But another important thing to consider is a lot of colleges, both in the US and in Europe, give a lot of importance to what your GPA is. So, for example, if you want to apply to a school like ETH Zurich, you need a minimum GPA of 9, irrespective of however impactful your research profile is. If your GPA is below 9, they directly reject you. So, it's just a very good idea to refer to sites such as Grad Cafe, when there's a usual report over the past couple of years of how acceptances, when acceptances come out, and what was their profile, why do they think that they got rejected, etc. Then you have recommendation letters, you have a statement of purpose, then you have something called a GRE exam, that's graduate record examination. You have your resume, you have a purpose statement. So a purpose statement is somewhat not mandatory in all universities. Some of them expect a purpose statement, and a lot of university just combine statement of purpose with purpose statement. However, they are two different things. Also, a lot of universities also ask for something that's known as a diversity statement. So in universities wherein there's a huge cultural plethora, they expect to understand how you and your background and your upbringing, inclusive of your culture, is going to impact the whole consortia of people who are currently residing in that country. So that's a very important uh, statement that you got to write. Uh, of all I know, University of Minnesota and UC Davis need a personal statement. So that's something that you should probably work on if you're planning to apply to these schools. Then you have another test, that's TOEFL, and GRE are two critical exams. So one important thing to note of these is GRE and TOEFL. You need to have cutoff score. So if you don't match the cutoff score, usually on their home pages, a lot of colleges state that if any one of your subjects are a little below the threshold, you can still go on and apply, but there's no guarantee of acceptance. So that's one thing you should keep in mind. TOEFL, you should try to get a score of 100, and GRE, anything above 315 is good enough for you to get into a fairly decent university in the US. And also, a lot of TOEFL and GRE scores are important because if you are applying for a position like a graduate research assistant or a graduate teaching assistant, wherein you need to talk to a lot of people, then you need to ensure that your English is of a given quality. So at times, if you don't classify, you don't pass that cutoff rate, they probably ask you to take a couple of courses in English over your first semester, and then you can apply for a GTA position. So just talking about GRE. So GRE is basically a multiple choice question. It's got three principal components. It's got an analytical writing section wherein you have an argumentative statement, wherein there'll be a statement where there are a number of flaws and you need to just argue what you think wrong about it. There's another part which basically categorizes what your opinions are on a given matter. Like for example, uh, if I were to just give a statement saying that I believe that COVID vaccines need to be dispensed to people irrespective of their age. So they just want to understand what's my take on that, what goes on in my mind, what's my rationale, what uh, innovative points can I bring across, and how it's going to make an impact to the current scenario. You have a verbal and a quantitative section that's got around 45 questions each, and they are 170 marks. So the way you get a GRE score is it's a combination of verbal plus quantitative, and analytical writing is just given separately. So you get your verbal and quantitative score in the same day, wherein your analytical writing section comes 2 weeks later. And a lot of colleges have a minimum requirement of 3 or 3.5 for you to apply to their program, and that is very critical. So you have a number of references. I've attached four brief references which are very useful, and a lot of people abide by them. Manhattan is the Bible if you want to apply for a GRE exam. And again, Manhattan also has a test series. And if you go to various Facebook groups currently focused towards discussion about GRE and TOEFL, a lot of people, you might find a lot of people who are willing to share their resources at a small price, or at times they just give it out for free. So, of my experience, I think Manhattan GRE test level questions are very similar to the exam day. So, if you uh, get scores that you are satisfied with for that exam, I think you're good to go. So you should, on an average, a lot of people ask how many days are you supposed to prepare for your GRE exam, how long is it supposed to be. So the simple answer, it depends from people to people. I mean, a lot of individuals who have like a very strong English background and they are fluent with various not very commonly used English words, they don't find it very difficult. However, there are a lot of people who aren't very fluent in English. So for them, I believe 6 months uh, is a fairly decent timeline for you to prepare thoroughly for the GRE exam and uh, hopefully get good scores. And then next is the TOEFL. So TOEFL again has got four sections. It's got reading, speaking, listening, and writing. So like I said, if you're looking for a GTA or a GRA position, TOEFL is very important. So you've got three, four common resources. And a lot of people have been telling me, and this is something I believe too, that if you've prepared for your GRE and your English is at that level, preparing for your TOEFL is not going to be so difficult. So for TOEFL, what's very important is your speaking section. So so it basically is given you're given a statement and you're supposed to talk about it, and you have around 30 seconds to talk about it and a given 20 seconds to prepare for it. So you need to be spontaneous, and whatever you say needs to be crystal clear, and it needs to have a lot of weight. And this is particularly important because GTA positions, a lot of them involve teaching students. So a lot of professors or departments might mail you saying that prepare a small presentation on XYZ topic wherein you will be asked to talk about something. So for example, I was asked to prepare a small slide on water activity, of how water activity is critical. How do you calculate water activity? What should be the cutoff water activity in a given product, etc., etc. So this is how the whole process starts. They want to understand how fluently you are able to converse, because coming from India, the way we speak and the way the Americans speak, for my case, is very different. So we really don't get what they're talking because we think they're talking fast, and since our tone is a lot mixed up compared to what theirs is, even they don't understand a lot of things that you're. So the phonetics is very different. So this is another important aspect that everyone needs to keep into pitch, that you've got to talk slowly, but it needs to be crystal clear so that both parties understand what the conversation is all about. So talking of listening and reading, I found YouTube to be a particularly useful resource through the process. So there are a lot of sections wherein you have a listening section or you have a reading section where you're given a number of different passages. Just get onto a book, just write all your answers, and the last you have a key or a legend wherein you can just refer your answers to. And for speaking, one very important practice I consider is, for the whole speaking topic, you need to uh, listen to yourself speak rather than listen to another person speak. So what you principally do is you look at a random topic, you give yourself 20 seconds and then record yourself speaking. You can listen to it and you can make other people listen to it, and they'll have a lot of positive points to give you on how you could improvise over the process. So this is the next is statement of purpose. So basically, a statement of purpose is to uh, tell the graduate committee who you are, what you are doing, and how would you like to be a part of their program. So uh, there are a couple of important questions that every SOP needs to address. So what kind of work is the university or the graduate school doing that particularly interests you? Why do you think that the program that you're applying to is a good fit for you, and vice versa? And another very important uh, question which a lot of people don't take into picture is, how are you going to contribute to the ecosystem of that particular graduate school and that department uh, by thinking out of the box. So this is some very important things that an SOP needs to be formulated, and an SOP is not something you can write over a week. Uh, I took as long as 10 revisions to write a fairly decent SOP. So you've got to write a lot of things in an SOP of who you are, what interests you particularly in the area of interest. Like for example, talking of food science, I had to actually talk about the cutting edge technology, the whole logic of feeding 9.7 billion people in the year 2015, and how our food system needs to be radicalized to bring about this change. So that was something that I consider to be very important. So that's how I introduced myself in the SOP. Then I slowly transgressed onto telling them why I am here. Why am I doing a BTech in food engineering and technology? What was going on in my mind after my 12th grade that I decided to pursue food engineering as a major? What have I done while I was doing a BTech in food engineering and technology? If I have done research, what research was it? If you have industry experience, what did you do in the industry experience? What did you learn out of it? And how do you think your learnings align with the research of a given professor, or how your learnings have motivated you to do something uh, along those lines? Is something that's very important and needs to be considered. And the next is a letter of recommendation. So a letter of recommendation ideally is taken very very seriously out here in the states when you apply. So when you get a letter of recommendation, what they look for is what are the credentials of the individual who's writing you a letter of recommendation. I've seen a lot of cases wherein the graduate school committee has a look at their LinkedIn profile. If they are aligned to an institution, they go to see their page on the institution. If they have publications, what publications are doing they are into, what their whole major of interest is, what did you do, or what was your given interaction with your recommendee such that he wants to recommend you to the program. So it's always good for you to have some kind of uh, uh, an intimate relation with your uh, recommendee, so that they actually know you one on one. They can vouch for certain traits that gets you into the program. So for example, since I've worked a lot with Dr. Arya, her recommendation made a huge impact to my program, because we've had research projects together. We had a lot of subjects which I took under Dr. Arya. We wrote a review paper together. So the graduate committee knows that I have worked with Dr. Arya over such a long period of time, and whatever she says is true about me, and that makes a lot of impact in the long run. So this is basically what a good LOR will discuss. So, like I said, what is the relation with the student? Why should the graduate faculty listen to your opinion? Like I said, they even look at your title. What makes this particular student that you are actually recommending him and not any other student? So, and then other questions like what did the student do that he particularly impressed you for you to write a recommendation? Like talk about their accomplishments. If they were very interactive in the class, they made the class a lot more intuitive. They asked good questions. They were diligent in their work. Marks is not the only criteria. It's just about your whole interaction with the professor and the entire experience. And then you also got to write what makes a student qualified for the graduate school. Why do you think that student will fit into this graduate school? And if he has any particular background that makes him a favorable candidate. And if you know something about the graduate program where the student is applying to, like for example, if someone were to write my recommendation for the Ohio State University, and you tell them something like he's worked with me and XYZ's research aligns with what Rahul wants to do at this moment, so I think he'll be a perfect fit for that research group, is something that makes a lot of impact onto a research application. The next is like ma'am said she wanted some idea on scholarship. So there are a lot of scholarships. So one of the most common scholarship that a lot of people apply to and get through is the Fulbright Nehru Masters Fellowship. So the Fulbright Master Nehru Fellowship, it closes 1 year prior to you applying to the program. So for example, if I want to apply to a program in say uh, October of 2021 and the program starts on August 2022, I need to apply for a Fulbright Nehru Fellowship 6 months before that. So you've got to actively go look up these links, see what's going on, when is the deadline, what are the requirements, because a lot of fellowships also require you to get a letter of recommendation, write a letter of motivation, wherein you talk about what makes you deserve that particular financial assistance. So it's a long shot. So I understand a lot of people in the second or third year may not be in a position to apply for all these fellowships. So I've also had a lot of colleagues who primarily finish off their first 4 years of their bachelor's, then they start working, and while they're working they start looking at scholarships, fellowships, um, and work experience in the industry if it's aligned to something that you're doing at that moment is very important. And they also look into what work experience you've been doing when you apply to a graduate program. So for example, if I had been working in the past 2 years for an organization and then I applied to a professor whose work is very similar to what I do, uh, or I did back in my industrial experience, it really goes a very long run. So this is also, there are a number of fellowships. Like the DAAD fellowship is also a very uh, commonly applied for fellowship. So they also offer fellowships if you want to go for an internship in the summer. So if you want to go for a 3 month internship, they also offer you like a return flight ticket plus your living cost once you've gotten accepted from a given institution. And the ET at Zurich scholarships are also very, very good, but a little difficult to get. So they have two scholarships. One's the Excellence Scholarship, and the other is an ET at Zurich scholarship. So the Excellence Scholarship primarily uh, takes into picture your entire tuition fee, plus it gives you living cost, wherein your ETH scholarship just waives off your tuition fee and gives you 50% of what the Excellence Scholarship gives you. So here the another very good scholarship is the SN Bose Scholar Students Exchange Program. So exchange programs are usually for a semester, but taking a couple of courses, staying in another country, looking at the entire education system and the difference is a little important to build up your mind if you are exactly doing what you want to do. And I understand if you are in your second or third year and you really don't know what your research focus is or what you want to do ahead. But one very important thing that everyone needs to keep in mind is that when you apply to a given professor, he wants you to be really sure of what you are doing at that moment, that you are currently applying to a given, like his a position in his group because you have a lot of interest in, for example, food chemistry or food microbiology. And I understand it's going to be a little difficult. So what I would suggest over the long run is, if you are doing say a food a technology centric bachelor's program, you could probably start off doing an industrial internship in the first semester, take up something of a research internship in your second semester. Then you will probably get a good hang of what an industry experience is versus what a research experience is, because they are two different boats altogether. I mean, the hardships are equal, but they are completely different in both of them. So you, as time progresses, you make a fairly well built profile such that you are just overall development, plus you know what you want to do. And then probably in the by the end of the third or the starting of the fourth year, you are say even 60% sure of what you want to do. I think 60% is also a pretty good number if you want to go for that. And also, GRA positions are usually appointed by a professor in a given department. For example, it is very much possible for me to get accepted into the food science and technology department while I am a GRA for a microbiology department, or for example, a horticulture department or an animal science department. That is extremely normal, and these are two different processes altogether. Whereas a teaching assistantship position is usually offered by a department. So that comes out of department funding, and the other is out of a funding that a given advisor has at that moment. So these are just a few example of various jobs that I've seen back in India and the States as well. So it's a very multidisciplinary science. You can be hardcore looking at food tech, or you can actually be a scientist back at NASA. Because I don't know, a lot of if you know, HACCP was built by NASA in combination with the General Mills company. So there is a lot of scope, and food is currently one of the most important things that we are currently looking at, because with the growing population, we want to feed mouths, we want to make the whole food system sustainable and just over a long period of time. So this is just a couple of examples of where various food science centric alumni are in the industry today. So this was it from my end. I would really appreciate if you guys have any questions in mind. I would love to answer them.
Thank you so much, Rahul. I would appreciate. Yeah, you have stopped the screen. Yeah. So we have few questions on our screen, and some of the audiences have also sent me those questions to me personally. Ankur is asking, why did you choose U.S. universities over Europe university?
So I had applied to both the universities at Europe. I'd also got an acceptance from ETH Zurich and University of Copenhagen. And in the US, I'd gotten an accept from University of Minnesota. I'd gotten an accept from Ohio State, from NC State University, and also from Cornell. So a lot of people ask me, you got an acceptance into Cornell. What are you doing back at Ohio State? I mean, you got a accept into an Ivy League college, but one very important thing that you need to consider is when you're talking of a professional program and you have an advisor, the relationship between you and your advisor is critical. You need to be laser focused on what research is currently taking place and how you align to that given research. And plus, another important factor to take into picture is how the whole coursework is, what kind of courses are offered to you, if language is going to be a barrier to you or not. And financial assistance is another very important thing to take into picture. So the universities back wherein I got into Europe, I wasn't offered financial assistance in any of them, whereas I got a financial assistance from the Ohio State University. And dairy tech was something that I was very much interested in, and I wanted to pursue it. That's why I chose Ohio State University. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, this is so crystal clear, Rahul, and I'm so happy that you had so many opportunities. But yes, it is very important that you have a support of finance from the university. So, Rahul, you have through your presentation tried to give very important tips. But if a student would like to start to apply for all these fellowships or planning for going abroad for higher education, when should the person start planning, and when should the person start actually while pursuing the graduation, or when is the correct time, and how much time in total it takes to complete the entire process successfully?
So, ideally speaking about it, you should start right about your second year. But practically speaking, you aren't very sure of what you want to do until you're in the third year of your engineering. So I just think that the sooner the better. But however, it's just a good idea if you have the time to just look at various career opportunities that you have in your second year. If what opportunities do MBA and, for example, industry experience hold for you, versus what requirements and plus what potential areas of application are there when you apply for a master's or a academia centered program again. So that is one important thing that you have to look into. I mean, by the second year, you should just have a list of potential options you have currently. Do you want to get into consulting? Do you want to stay in your core industry? Do you want to offer chemical engineering as a major? Do you want to do a master's or a PhD at that moment? You should just probably have all your plans open at that moment. And once you are a little bit into it, because what I felt is until the third year was actually when I actually deep dove into what food technology was, what food science was, and that really interested me a lot. So in my second year, I had a lot of plans open of what I can do potentially after graduation. But it was the third year wherein I fixated my mind that I want to do research, I want to uh, do a master's, uh, and then that's how it went ahead. So I just think it's a good plan, just to have all options open at the moment. uh, get a little bit more into the core that you're currently pursuing, and then probably by the end of the third year or mid, on what you want to do.
So, do you also recommend from your own experience? It shows that you have worked in an industry and then decided to go. So, do you also recommend our students to, first take a hands or work for an industry or working somewhere and then going abroad, planning for abroad? What is your take on that?
I just think, like I said, it's just good to have an overall experience of what the industry currently and like the various sources currently comply of. So it just makes your profile a lot more balanced, such that uh, if you're applying for a master's or PhD, or you're applying to a job directly, they know that you had some amount of experience with the research side of things, you've had a hands-on experience with the industry side of things, and probably you make a good fit, or you understand what the correlation between the two factors are, and that's very important at the moment.
So applying is a very, very important process. So it takes some time and one needs a very good planning. Are there any financial expenses involved in the application process and how much it is and how much is that burden? Any tips on that?
Yes, definitely. So if I most application deadlines are somewhere around October, November, or at times if they go up to December 15 of every year. So so the approximate timeline is, if you give your GRE, by the time you get your GRE score, like the entire scorecard is going to take you 2 weeks. And by the time you need to individually submit your GRE and TOEFL scores to universities. So here there is a catch. So when you apply to a particular institution, you have the application fees. So along with the application fees, you will be submitting a statement of purpose. Your transcripts are usually a scanned unofficial copy, and then three recommendations. So three recommendations, plus you've got to submit your GRE score. So taking GRE and taking TOEFL are $200 each. So that's around 14 to 15,000 for each. Plus sending individual scores during my time was around $15 per university. So with GRE and TOEFL, you get four free sending receipts, wherein you can send it to four colleges of your choice, and you need to send the scores on the day of the exam. So while you are writing your exam or you're done with it, you'll be shown an option of where you can submit your scores. So that's very important, that you on the day of the exam, you know which schools you want to apply to, like four schools wherein you want to send your scores for sure. So that is a very good idea, because you get an option to send four free scores only once. So four free scores for GRE, four free scores for TOEFL, and then the other additional universities you apply to, you've got to pay like a $15 fee for GRE, and I think it's 17 for TOEFL.
Okay, so at a time like we are not sure when we are applying that which university we are going to get into. So at a time, how many number of universities one should apply for, the top one or the best one, and like how much expenses does every university application is, like when you visit to the university's website or the portal, you have to pay online fees and how much it is.
Yeah. So when you start the process, I mean, when you're going for your exam, and you want to probably shortlist universities you want to apply to, so 1 month before you go for your GRE or TOEFL exam, it's a very good idea to visit various websites of universities who are currently offering, say, a food science program. So then you should classify the universities as moderate, ambitious, and easy. Easy ones are the one you are going to get for sure. Moderates are the one wherein you have, say, a 75 to 80% chance. And then ambitious universities is where you have, say, a 10% chance. So for example, I were to write my GRE exam, I get a score of 320. So looking at 320, I know my easy schools I will get in one go. So what I do is I apply to one of them, the easy ones, two of the moderate schools, and one ambitious school. Like for my case, I applied to Cornell, My the other moderate scores went to Purdue and OSU, and the last one went to NC State. So that was the way I split my entire uh, schooling
Excellent.
the.
Yeah.
And talking of the total amount that you need to pay, so for an average, you're spending 200 plus 200 for GRE and TOEFL, that's around $400. Then, for example, I applied to 10 different universities. Four of them are free scores. So I have six scores of GRE plus TOEFL. So that's another 200 odd amount. So that's 600 plus application fee for each university. So that ranges anywhere between, for example, the application fee for Purdue while I applied was $85, whereas the application fee for UC Davis was $120. So it depends wherein you apply to. So the whole cost of application for a given process, and if you apply to 10 to 12 colleges on average, it's going to cost you around $1,000 the entire process. It's a little expensive.
Yeah, it's $1,000 means almost 70,
Yeah.
70 to 80,000 expenditure. So one has to be very, very
Over
careful
that.
while choosing the universities, right?
Yeah. But again, since the whole food science program has a glitch that you need to get a department approval plus an advisor approval, it's generally better to apply to a larger number of colleges so that you get a better chance. But
Yeah.
another bright point to look at this is food science, like applying for a master's or a PhD, is the only place wherein you have an option to get a funded master's. And when I tell my friends I'm doing a funded master's, it's very strange because most master's programs are self-funded. So this is a very bright point. Not a lot of people appreciate, because food science is the only master's area wherein you have a potential to get 100% full funding before you're even leaving your home country.
Funding is so important, Rahul. So how did you find that, that specific? So in a university's portal, it is already displayed that this program would be fully funded, or later on after communicating, you said in your talk that, you have to develop slowly the network. You cannot directly, contact. So slowly you have to develop the faithfulness in the faculty. And then, so how did you come to know that this specific professor has a funding, and that's how do you approach, or it is already displayed in the university's website?
A few universities have open positions already listed on the website. So you have, like for example, a clean food process engineering laboratory is looking for a graduate student, MS or PhD, for a fully funded 3-year program. For example, some of them have that. And a lot of universities also have something that's called fellowships. So you have scholarships and fellowships, but the chances of Indians, to be very honest, getting that fellowship is a little bleak, at least talking about the states. It's usually offered to US citizens, but there are a few fellowships which are offered to others, international students as well. So you have something like the President's Fellowship that is usually given to all of them. But for getting a fellowship, you need to be recommended by somebody in that particular institution. So I directly cannot apply for a fellowship offered by an institution altogether. So there's a slight catch when I talk about that. So what I primarily did was I wrote to a lot of professors. For example, Purdue University states that we will not accept students who do not have external funding. They do not accept students on self-funding at all. So you need to either be supported by a scholarship, or you need to be supported by a assistantship by a particular uh, department or a professor. So for my case, I had initially gotten through with another professor at Ohio State, and he said he had funding, but because COVID hit at that time, and the USDA had retracted a lot of its funds. So the funds were no longer being used for education, but it was going into healthcare. So then he no more had funding. So then I was also in conversation with a couple of other professors. We've had a lot of one-on-one interviews. We had open talk sessions wherein we just try to understand what's going on in a particular research domain, who contributes how, did we find any interesting read, or what possible ideas you have. So this is a very important component that you should keep in mind, that when you talk to a professor, a is that you are thorough with what work he's been doing. You are thorough. If he has a lab group page, you know that lab group page on the tip of your tongue. And three is whatever focus area he's working on, you should have a lot of ideas and you should have a lot of questions on what he's done. So that just brings about a lot of interest. Like for example, if I'm talking to someone and tell them, okay, I read your paper, but I really didn't understand why you did XYZ instead of ABC, wouldn't that have made your life easier and the whole process a lot more intuitive and novel? So that's what piques their interest. So they're like, okay, being an undergrad student or a master's student, so these are two different processes altogether. If I've done my master's in India and I'm applying for a PhD, they usually look for what I've done in my master's, what has been my thesis major. And if I'm a bachelor student who's applying for a master's, they look at my mindset and what approach I have in mind. How open am I to ideas at a given moment? And that's the whole driving force here.
Yeah, Rahul, we have this. I know that this question has been already answered by you in your presentation, but if you can quickly, revise and brief how to know which universities are good in which field, and like food engineering or food science, etc. This question is asked by one of our student from foods department, Ankur Upadhyay.
So this question can be answered only one way. So you essentially have to visit institute websites. You have to look at what research focused a particular professor is doing. Then once you're done doing that, you look at the publications they have. So while doing a master's, you usually don't look a lot at the grad school, but you look at what a professor is doing at that moment. That is one very critical component that a lot of people don't get. They are still chasing the fact that we want to graduate, say, from an Ivy League college. But what one needs to understand is that the whole advisor-student relation has to be, it's supposed to be very sanctum. So that's something that you cannot let go. So you need to actually look at what research they've been doing, what are their publications. You have a lot of factors in publication. You have something called H index, you have something called I index. So how much is the number? If they're working on food engineering, what particular area of food engineering are they working on? Are they working on novel food process developments, or are they working on modeling, or are they working on there are a number of areas where research is currently taking place. So it's usually I would give higher priority to a professor or an advisor over a graduate school.
Excellent,
You have to
Rahul. It
follow
is
the
so
right
very
line.
important, and I have read recently also in the Nature, one of the topmost scientific journal. In that also there was one article appeared, and I will put the links in this lecture, that how important is to choose your advisor and mentor for carving a bright future. So I agree with you that having a very good mentor and advisor is very very important. Moving ahead, we have another question, like how much expenses generally right now you have a funding, support, financial support, but usually if it would not have been a supported funding, how much expenses you would have paid per year in Ohio University?
So, talking about Ohio State specifically, so the tuition fee at Ohio State is $39,000 a year, and the living cost somewhat. If you live a pretty frugal life wherein you cook most of your meals, you don't resort to a lot of lavish spending. You'll spend around $8,000 to $9,000 a year on your living costs. So that's around $48,000 a year. So just multiply that into 2 or 1.5. A lot of people take higher number of credits over the past year in order to finish uh, faster, and they save a lot of tuition fee. People who do it over 2 years, they spend around 96 to $97,000. That's around 70 to 80 lakhs. This is from a state university. If I go to an Ivy League college, uh, the amount can go as high as a crore.
One more question, Rahul. So, for studying abroad out of India, do you need only GRE TOEFL as an exam to enter and pursue master, or say for example for PhD, there is no exam required, or in addition to GRE TOEFL there are other examinations also needed one to crack to pursue the higher education in abroad or other countries like Europe,
So you have two
USA?
options. If you've done your MTech from India and you want to apply for a PhD, say in the US, you need to give GRE TOEFL. But if you've done your BTech from India and you've already given your GRE TOEFL, you've done your masters in the US and you want to apply for a PhD, then you don't need to give GRE and TOEFL again. You can just
Okay.
transfer it directly.
Okay. What is the minimum SGPA is required to pursue the graduate studies in US universities, especially?
So, from what I have gauged over the past couple of years, anything up and above 8.5 is good enough to take you ahead. If you have something about 9, that goes even better.
Okay, thank you, Rahul. There is one more question. Like you have mentioned, Canada, UK, USA, Europe. So, and then in every country, and there are also different courses. Like suppose I'm a BTech graduate in food science and technology. So after BTech graduation, should I pursue MBA abroad or masters or PhD? I know that you have answered this saying that you did not knew that whether you are going to continue a PhD after your master or that time while we were applying. So, what is your guidance or comment on whether as a to our graduate student whether to go for an MBA or a master or a PhD abroad?
So that is completely dependent on what you want to do. So I understand that you may not be able to answer this question as soon as now, but one very important thing to actually look for is that an MBA is something that you can do whenever you want. So there is no age cap for an MBA, but however, uh, there are a lot of people who have say 10 years of industry experience and then come and pursue a master's. But I don't want to be a stereotype here when I say that your MS or a PhD has an age cap because subconsciously it does, but a business school never has. I know a lot of people who've done a BTech in something, and they've probably done a master's in the same field, and now they're at a business school and they're working for some company like Deloitte. Where is food science and where is what is Deloitte doing? It's instant to consulting current. So a lot of people have different things they do. They change their mind at the last time. So uh, I would not emphasize on doing a particular field. It's just about your area of interest and what piques your interest and how you want to sail through that particular period. If you think research is something that interests you, you want to do research for the next 2 years, you can go on, work in the industry for a couple of years. After working, you think that, okay, I want to do a PhD. Research is something that interests me. I come back to do a PhD. Then some people also feel that doing a master's or a PhD, the highest level you can reach within an organization is say head R&D, and they also want to get into managerial positions. So usually they go to business school, and there are a lot of MNCs in the US. They usually pay for your business school and provide that you work for them for the next 5 years. So that's also a pretty good bet that you can rely on.
Yes, excellent, Rahul, for answering this question. I remember because I have been in these academics for so many years. So we get those links to provide the recommendation letter, which is one of the so important and very nicely you have explained the top tips or important criterias to be mentioned or important points to be mentioned in um, recommendation. One most important here I would like to add is like mental ability. Lots of time, in fact universities have contacted me as a professor asking about the mental ability of a student to handle day to day lives emotional situations or emotional quotient. So that's very very important. And moving ahead to another questions, which is asked, are there any important links or websites one must or in your time you have referred, and will it be possible for you to share those links of the websites which are very very important and which will guide students and make their life easier while applying abroad?
So I'll share them once the presentation is done. So one important area to look at is QS rankings. If you want to know which you have got an acceptance from a number of schools and you want to choose which school you want to go to. Another important site probably will be Google Scholar is something that I believe. You can also refer to Scopus. So if you actually want to see what the publications of a given researcher has been over the past 10 years, what is his concentration changing into. So, for example, I've seen this is a little off topic, but a lot of people in material science, I mean, it started off working with on metals and they slowly start transgress towards working on polymers and so lithium ion batteries. So, you actually understand the trend of how research is evolving, how adaptive a particular research group is, how impactful are their research, how many citations have come through, which journal a particular article has been published in, what portion does it cover. So this is another very important side, and another important side is grad cafe. So grad cafes are current, it's a completely student run portal wherein you have a lot of open discussions about what a given university has. Some alumni from that university are open to having discussions with potential incoming students of what they want to do. You also know if someone has got an acceptance from that university for a given course. For example, if I just go on to grad cafe and I type food science, I'll actually know how many people have already got an acceptance for fall 2021, which university they got into. So they usually just write comments that I had an interview with my principal investigator 2 weeks back and it was good, and today I got my admit, but no status on financial uh, assistance yet, so still waiting for that. So you know the whole process is evolving, what current people have. So when I applied to UC Davis, that year they had accepted only one student. So I came to know about this because of the discussion that was going on in grad cafe. So one individual commented that I got accepted, and someone else just told me that there's a statistics that they accepted only one student this year. Because USDA also, like when talking of funding, we stand at some amount of a disadvantage because we are international students, because a lot of funding comes from the US Department of Agriculture, and they have a lot of conditions like the student who's been bestowed this fellowship has to be a US citizen.
Yeah, so very important. So now you have gone to US University, Rahul, but at the same time you have worked in India also. So what difference you find, especially in the study facilities or research facilities that you observe there, and how it is advantageous over, pursuing masters or research here in India compared to US universities?
Okay, so this is a very interesting point. So I've just done one semester here, but one drastic difference that I found between India and the US is the whole academic and the education platform in the US is very self-evolving. So they don't really give you a lot of problem statements or a lot of things to do. It's you don't have a lot of exams here per se. It's just a lot of open book exams wherein say I've taken this course called food additives back here. So for our exam, we just get like a food label. For example, we just got a packet of chocolates and we were just asked to talk about what roles of ingredients are. For example, if I have sorbitol plus isomaltitol, what is sorbitol doing? Both of them are polyols. Both of them are supposed to be sweeteners, but one is an antifreeze, the other is just a carrier for flavors and other migrating compounds. So it just builds a lot on the whole development process, and then you start thinking outside the box of, okay, I have got two sweeteners here, what's the point of two sweeteners? Should one have another a binary role that it's going to be playing at the moment? And research to be said. So research here is you're just given like a problem statement. Like for example, I tell you that milk has got this allergenic compound called beta lactoglobulin. You want to use something like supercritical carbon dioxide to just reduce the antigenicity. So you have got to plan your own experiments. You have to do things at your own pace. So deliverables and timelines are pristine here, but the whole thing works at your own pace. You want to work 5 days a week and you want to finish up work, that's on you. If you want to work only weekends, that's again on you. They give you the keys to the entire department. You can go in and do whatever you want to do. They trust you. I mean, that's the whole process. So things here, like I understand there are a lot of pros and cons talking of everything back in India versus here in the States. But two things that I found to be very important is the thinking process. It is very evolving, and second is independent research. That is exactly what I wanted to do.
Wow, thank you so much, Rahul. So, in continuation with that same question, like in the US or states, um, accommodation or food or language or the social culture, do you find like it's difficult to getting accommodated or adjusted, uh, being having been come from India? So, what message or what advice would you like to give to our students?
So one thing that I particularly found when I came here is Indians are Indians' best friends. I mean, you can just get in touch with any random alumni or a current student, a graduate student in your department. Just get in touch with them. Like for my case, there was already someone from ICT who was doing a master's here. So you're the whole senior junior helping collaboration, and the environment is very fruitful. So what they do is, so someone's helped your senior, so they are going to help you such that they pass the baton on to you so that you help someone else. So they come to pick you up, they show you potential accommodation areas, they help you go grocery shopping. So your Indian stores are a little far away, so they take you to different places. They on the first day to your institute, they'll come with you, they'll show you around the whole facility. So that I think is particularly very important. I mean, I found Indians to like the whole Indian brotherhood has developed a lot where when you're coming to the streets. Like you'll be happy to find another Indian and talking in Hindi for a matter of change.
Thank you so much, Rahul. And I know that it's been a long time we have been discussing. It's more than 1 hour. So thank you so much for being here today. And I request you, if my students have more questions related to studying abroad, um, I will post it to you, and I'm sure you will be happy to help our student to get through that questions for a very good answer. So yes, you have already shared your email ID for our student. But in addition to that, if there are more questions, I expect and I know that you will help our students. So with this, I would like to thank you for being here today, for our students spending your valuable time and sharing the top important tips for getting into abroad pursuing higher education. Thank you, Rahul.
Definitely. Thank you for having me here, ma'am. Someone did this for me that I found very useful. So I just think I would love to help anyone. So if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me on the email in the chat box, or you can also look me up on LinkedIn and we could connect there as well.
Yeah, thank you so much, Rahul. Before you leave, I would like to take one photo. Mm, Yeah, so if you can put your,
Do you need some more light?
yeah, but it's okay. I know that there is a night there, so no problem.
Can we do something with this?
Yeah, just try if you can make it little brighter, or otherwise that's absolutely okay. Just yes, thank you so much, Rahul.
Thank
Once
you.
again, being here today, and I look forward for more interaction and more collaboration with you in this learning journey. Thank you so much.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you everyone. Thank you students for joining here, taking out. This is too early morning here, but if you want to take something good, we have to sacrifice, and hard work always pays off. I know that Rahul, you have done a lot of hard work to getting into. People only see the success, but in today's talk, I could see that how much hard work and efforts you have put into going there, and you are enjoying now the fruits of hard work. Hard work always pays off. Thank you so much, Rahul.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye bye. Take care.